friend Corey Benz, and he laid out like burning away that fear, right? Burning away what is holding us back, and that just you got to burn that away. And so that's been fantastic. So my next guest, I followed him for quite some time through Instagram, which I love. This is what I love about social media, being able to connect this way. And so I want him to introduce himself. I've known Kane digitally, if you will, for probably over a year now. And he's got an incredible story. He's got a very successful business. He's in a place that I really love in Australia. So Kane, thank you so much for being part of this and coming aboard. So if you would just take 5 minutes, if you will, introduce kind of yourself, what makes you, your background, and then we'll get into the whole why of what you do.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks, Cameron. So Aussie born, Aussie raised, live in Sydney, grew up here. I'm 34 now. Grew up in Sydney with a single mother. Parents were divorced, came from not the most successful, educated upbringing. Good, hardworking mother. Where I am now, fast forward many years later, went through school, was kicked out at age 14. So the school system failed me. Very ADHD driven kid, a lot of energy, very keen to learn, but just a bit abstract. School system didn't cater for that. And ended up in a boys' home. Went from there. Was sort of told that, school wasn't for me, just get a labouring job, just accept it. This went on for years. Then in my early 20s, I've read a couple of books, and I think it was Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Yes.
Probably know the book, man. Yeah. And long story short, that sort of just gave me a light bulb that thinking you don't need the traditional education. You don't need to come from the most successful backgrounds. And that sort of opened up my mind to this whole new world of thinking, maybe I could invest, maybe I could have this passive income, maybe there's a different way to doing things. And the concept of the book is, but for some of the people that might be listening or, watching this, it could be, you don't have to be the rich dad is the dad that went the entrepreneurial road, and the poor dad was the one that went the academic road, but he's a slave to his job and his salary's capped. And that just sort of triggered something in my mind. Mm-hmm. And later on, I was really good at maths. That was probably a strong subject. So I just went on with financial planning, got a job, started investing, sort of had to go back, educate myself in my early 20s. My high school education was 14 years old. I had a bit of a criminal record. So all these things were limiting in my mind, limiting my beliefs. And years later, ended up becoming a financial planner, a partner in a large firm. From that firm, went on to separate from the firm as a partner into my own business. And, I've had some adversity since, but made it on a really good path. And then I actually started going back and working with some of the charities that helped me, like the youth centres, the Boys Town that I lived at, the boys' home. I went back and became one of the first, or I was the first foundation board member ever that ever went to the school after nearly 85 years of existing. Boys Town's in America too, so it's the same lineage of the Boys Town home. Mate, I've just experienced some really cool things. I've been exposed to some really harsh adversities, I suppose. I've seen a different world, but it's painted a very interesting perspective in my life. Yeah. But that'll be the summary, Cameron, man, to be honest.
Dude, there's a lot in there. I mean, we could go on from, ADHD, which, I know that feeling, right? I remember just always being told, my parents would always get called into the principal's office or, meet with a teacher, and they would always say, well, he's just a very high-strung kid. He's very active, and they didn't have there was not that title when, I was growing up in high school. And I just, if I got bored quick, which often happened, which is a lot. So I can totally understand that. I mean, single mom, we could go into a whole thing with the single mom, but there's just so much to unpack. But I want to get into, this when you get into financial planning, because it's not a very, hey, people get into it, then that's a huge space. I mean, there's just so much going into it. So I want to read this real quick because I was doing some research online, but the space you're in is very competitive. Last report that I saw there are over 26,000 financial planners in Australia, which, wow. That's Australia. I mean, I'm in America, you're in Australia. That's crazy. So what drove you to enter a space that's very competitive? I mean, like you said, you went in with a partner and then you left and you started True North. So help us understand what drove you, what got you into that space of saying, financial planning, this is where I want to go.
When I got one of my first sort of labouring jobs, I was a tradesman, like an electrician sort of job. I went and worked in the mines in the desert part of Australia, call it like Central Australia, where it's just red dirt. Mm-hmm. And that was the only sort of low skilled job I could get that was decent paying. It's long hours, dangerous work. And I remember working in the mines and I started to get a bit of money and I had to manage it. And I decided to do finance online. I was like, I need to get adequate at some skill. I didn't really have much skill. And right. I thought I liked it and I enjoyed it. I had a passion. I liked the share market. Something that like at school I couldn't pay attention, but for the first time I could sit there and read a book in a week. It just caught me. I thought about the next time I could read the book or learn something, and it became exciting for the first time. And I realized that I could learn something, and I had the attention and the ability, and I wasn't limited in my my ability. And that's how it started, just to do a course to manage my own money. But after 2 years of really struggling to go through the course, like learning online is extremely hard for someone that doesn't have a long attention span, as you can imagine. Yeah. And I tried to quit a few times. There was times where I was like, I can't effing do this. Like, it's not for me. Like, you're trying to learn online. You're not in that work environment. I was working in a mine with blokes that are just, completely different to any corporate, and finally finished it. And then one day I thought maybe I'll try and get a job, and I reached out to an uncle of mine that used to work high up in the bank at my mum's sister's partner. And he pretty much told me that, almost in certain words, that maybe I should reconsider. I don't have a degree. I just did a diploma online. That was really hard for me. Right. It'd be hard. And then I thought, no, I'll go apply for jobs. And I applied for one job. And when I called up to see if they got my resume, the guy said we had 35 people that got masters in financial planning, let alone everyone else with a degree. He said, mate, do yourself a favor and get a degree or don't bother. And jeez. that was harsh, man. But I think there was a part of me that just, once I started to believe it was possible, I wanted to prove people wrong. I enjoyed it that much. You see these success stories, or the guy that 1% of someone that makes it to the top or wins, or, and I focused on that. I didn't focus on the 99% of things that could go wrong. And then I got into finance, and it was hard the whole way. My first internship, the only one in there without a degree. They took out of 200 applicants, they took 20 people. So I don't know if you watched the movie The Pursuit of Happiness.
Love that show. Mate, show.
It was almost like that. I was the guy that honestly, I got took out of all across Australia. This big bank took in 200 interviews. There was like 3 or 4 stages. Then we went to 20 across Australia. And then every 2 weeks there was a test. If you didn't get 80%, you got dropped. And it was 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 6, 8, 10. So it was 5 stages. At the end of that, you got 9 months in a live practice, and you had KPIs, and you had to bring in clients. Then it was intense. And wow. I remember, man, it was fun. Wow. And So I was this uneducated kid. So I remember when they said, let's pull out Excel and PowerPoint, and I didn't even know what they were because I come from a mining background, high
Yeah,
school
yeah.
level of 14. I looked around thinking, what are they talking about? And I remember when we first did our first calculation, I used Excel like a calculator. I was typing it in, not using the formulas. So I noticed early on my weaknesses were
Mhm.
the academics. My weaknesses were the tools and knowing how to use things, right? So I was so far behind. I actually won that internship at the end of the year. I surpassed everyone by a huge margin based on the percentage. They're only
Mhm.
obviously small numbers because we're all interns. But I got poached from that job by the practice I went into, became a partner. But the only thing I had was people skill. The way
Mhm.
I grew up around a lot of street kids. Had to be a little bit more different and had to have character and how to talk. And I think they were the skills that helped me. I started at 7 and I finished at 7. So they were my two strengths. I could talk better than people that come from the academic background, and I
Yeah.
could work harder. And I put those two together, and I struggled at the paperwork. I struggled at the spreadsheets, and I wasn't as quick, but I still won. And Matt, I remember people in the intern started to, spread rumors, say things, say that, you obviously like, and people started to try and kick me when I was at the top, and I was like the underdog. And it was just a funny experience. And then I, went into this partnership. I got poached by someone. He come in, this guy, and he pretty much pulled me aside in the intern and said, if you can come from a mining background,
Yeah.
with no education, he goes, if I can get hold of you for a couple of years, I'll show you how to do this properly, and offered me a job, and went into a partnership with him 2 years later, as we built that business. But and that's how I ended up in finance, and I just got really good at it. Very competitive space.
Yeah. Yeah.
And at a young age, I think I got a really, really good mentor. This guy that took me in taught me a lot really quickly. It was long hours, but I think it's all paid off. It just
Oh,
built a bit of resistance.
man, I'm talking to the Australian version of the pursuit of happiness. I mean, that is fantastic. I don't know how many people would have just, quit. I mean, I bet just listening to that. I mean, Eric Thomas, I follow him, Dr. Eric Thomas, or he's known as ET,
Yeah,
the hip
yeah,
hop preacher. He always will tell
he's a
people, look,
legend.
man, he's like, it took me 12 years to get a 4-year degree. And I think it's, and I listen to what you're saying. I mean, it's like using Excel as a typewriter. I mean, I could just see punching numbers. And I mean, just seeing that and listening to it. I mean, at any point, you could have just listened to the naysayers. You could have just listened to the people that were like, you're not going to do it. I mean, harsh reality, oftentimes we get the biggest critics are the people that we love, trust, and respect. And even the bigger ones, it's simply are within kind of a family friend space, and it's amazing how you just persevered and pushed through. And oftentimes it comes from just how we grow up and just that never quit attitude. And I think that is just it's important for people to hear that. I mean, to never quit, never give up. Because when you quit, you only quit on yourself, and I think that's just amazing. But let's keep going because I want to get into some of the other parts of the aspect and break down exactly what you were saying. But now
Yeah.
you were poached, which I think is funny, right? Here's this kid with no formal background, the street knowledge. I mean, let me just I need to expand. We need to talk about this street knowledge for a little bit because I think it's very important, right? Especially for professionals, right? To understand there's book knowledge and there's street knowledge, right? And the understanding the difference between the two. So help bring us into that a little bit more of the street knowledge and talking like that. Where is that fear that no fear of just talking with people? Well, I mean, how does that help you? Obviously, we understand, but how is that? I mean, this fear of just talking to strangers or picking up the phone and making a flat cold call. I mean, help me understand kind of that process of
Well,
just that street knowledge.
yeah, okay. So the two things. The awareness is the street knowledge is two things. If you grow around in more of a dangerous environment and around dangerous people, you have to be more aware and sensitive to human behavior,
Mm-hmm.
body language, tonality. Because the difference between getting yourself in the wrong situation, the right situation, can mean a lot of pain. Not just embarrassment. It could mean, severe violence. It could be, severe physical abuse, things like that. So at a
Mm-hmm.
younger age, you start to tune into the world a bit more. That's what, street smart is. So when you go into sales is that. It's not trying to sell, but it's trying to relate. They talk about that whole mirroring. You mirror the breathing, you mirror the tonality, the frequency of how high or low someone talks. And it's awareness of that. And I think I could just relate to people, life experience. Even though I was young, I was ahead of my age by far,
Mm-hmm.
which helped me against the other kids, but awareness of how people were feeling and acting. So you pick up on that. So that was the first thing. So when you're sort of around the street and stuff and it's more survival, you're forced to learn that early on than someone that's sheltered from it. The second thing you said to talk on was the no fear. So when you've got nothing to lose, you're not afraid to lose. It's different. It's like if you're up on the casino table and you've got, 100 grand in chips, you're hesitant to go all in. But if you're the guy that's got, $1,000 or you're at the bottom of the table, you easily to make irrational decisions, or you can still be rational, but you're easier to sort of take more risk if that's the way. You're willing to go all in a bit quicker because you're less to lose. And there's more on the table. And I think I wasn't afraid of rejection. I wasn't afraid of anyone to think I wasn't good enough or someone to hang up on the phone. I had people to tell me to F off and, who the hell are you? And I used to call them back. I called people back. I had people abuse me and I would call back until they talked to me normal. And I said, look, if you don't want to talk to me, just talk to me. Just tell me. I'm not going to call you if you just be polite. I'm just calling you to offer help. I'm here to call you to see how you are. I'm not doing anything to harm you. And then I would get them to the point. Some people obviously never picked up and, a couple of people I'd call back and they'd pick up and talk to you in the end. Look, it wasn't like they picked up and they just bought straight away. Like most of them picked up, agreed with me, and then still proceeded to go their own way. But I just had a different mentality about, I think, the way I approached it with the whole sales and, the not worried about what people thought of me. I cared about my level of standard. Obviously, I wanted to do a good job. I wanted to raise my standard, my ability. But at the end of the day, I think when you come from a lower demographic, you don't put yourself on a pedestal, and it's not as far to fall. So there's not as much fear behind that.
Yeah. Man, that we could do a whole nother segment just on those two aspects that you went over. So now that you've learned to kind of that street smart, and you're right, man, breathing and tonality and body language. I mean, that is when you're doing face-to-face sales or on the phone or Zoom meetings, these conferences, it is critical to just be able to pick up on those key indicators, right? If somebody's leaned back with their arms folded, they're like, man, I have got to break this wall down somehow, right? Or you can hear them on the phone and they're listening, right? They're giving you the courtesy to listen, but they're not actually they're not listening to what you're saying and what the value you can bring. And man, I think if you don't, obviously this isn't like, hey, go grow up. If you're not from a rough background, we're not saying, all right, well, ditch everything and go live in a rough neighborhood for a year or two. But there are plenty of opportunities for people to learn and grow and pick up some of that street smart knowledge, which I think is fantastic. And that fear that you talked about of just rejection, I think it's funny. Just someone doesn't talk polite. You just kept calling them back and you're like, look, you may not like what I'm doing, but let's just have an adult conversation. That is fantastic. That's awesome. So let's go let's go into it real quick. You know, you in 2000, I believe that's right, 2015, you started True North. Um, Help me
Yep.
understand how'd you come up with the name True North? I mean, where did that come from? True North.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, it's a funny story. Not many people ask, but I was originally in the partnership. So when I went into that partnership with the person that poached me, was my mentor,
Mm-hmm.
became my business partner. I learned a lot from this individual, really intelligent human being. And I was very young and naive. So as we went into business, I started to realize that our values weren't aligned long term. He was from an old school way. I wanted to be more technology, innovative, doing all this crazy stuff. He was from the, if it's not broke, don't fix it. Let's just keep to what we're doing. It works.
Right.
I've made money. And in the end, I wanted to go a different way. My view was more about following what I enjoyed, what was giving more to the client, not the most profitable service. He wanted to keep it to just be very simple, be good at one thing and do it well. Don't go outside. Don't try and bring new things in. And I was like, no, I've got the rest of my life. I need to be fulfilled in this. Like, I need to feel like I'm contributing to this space. And we just disagreed, and I said, I'm going to leave. And he's like, well, you probably won't grow as much as me and all that. And I said, well, this is what I want. It was my purpose. So I looked at this as like my true north. And I wanted to follow my true north, and I want the clients that we work with to follow their true north. And it's individual thing, right? So what's important to you might be similar, but it will be different to the other person. And everyone has their own true north of what they want to create. And I don't want to be true north financial where we're just money. We're a lifestyle business that creates your lifestyle. We do the numbers, so we do the finance, but we're creating a lifestyle based on that person's true north. That's why we intentionally called it lifestyle. The numbers play a role, but the numbers aren't the outcome. We're not here to get you 20% on a stock. We're here to say, what do you want to achieve? But the 20% on the stock may be the reason and the thing that helps you, work one day less a week, put your kids through a private school, retire when you're 55 rather than 70, like pay off the house earlier. But what does that mean? Where's the why? What are we creating? Because at the end of the day, we look at it's health, family, experiences. They're pretty much the only things that matter. And everything comes from that. And that's sort of where the name come from. But it was like a personal realization. And then I realized that's what we really did for clients, and that was important. You get clients that come in all the time and say, I just want to get the best stocks. I want to get the best shares. It's like, why? I want more money. Why? And then you drill down. It's like that had a purpose at the end of it that would actually do something for their life rather than just make more money. Because at the end of the day, all the money in the world's not going to do anything if you don't know where to apply it or what to do with it, or you don't know what it's got to create in your life as far as a better life or a better form of happiness. And it normally entails doing things and who you do those things with.